Hi, my name is Erin Thorpe. Join us for our WomenIN Wednesday webinar series, encouraging you to take the lead role for your whole self.
Hello, everyone. I'm Farah Kaleem, and I represent WomenIN's internal stakeholder engagement team. Thank you so much for joining us today for WomenIN's Wednesday webinars. As you know, today's session is a part of our self-care webinar series where we will discuss spiritual, emotional, and intellectual care. Now, I've been really looking forward to this session as we generally tend to put these aspects of ourselves at the back burner. So today we have an excellent opportunity to get fantastic guidance from our expert speakers. So let's start our session with some housekeeping info. First of all, I would like to remind everyone that we record the webinar sessions, which are available to our members if they want to view them later. I would request all of you to please keep your cameras off and your microphones on mute so that we reduce background noise and other distractions. Thank you. But most importantly, we really want your questions, which truly enrich the discussion. So please ask your questions that you may have in the chat feature during the session and after. We will be sharing them with our speakers as we go along. Now, moving on to sponsors. Now, this series would not be possible without the support of our sponsors. We are so grateful to all of them, including Tricon Solutions, Solve Strips, Matthew Kelman, Enter Solutions, ELF Solutions or ELF Solutions, Codwell Banker Complete Real Estate, Transcend Management Advisors, Your Soul Beyond, MegaPixx Media, and Calgary's Business. I would take this opportunity here to highlight one of the key benefits of joining us as a member. You can avail a whole variety of discounts and coupons from our wonderful sponsors. So don't wait, join us today. Now, for those of you who are joining us today for the first time, WomenIN is a 2020 Calgary-founded group that prepares women to transform the future by bringing the strength of your highest self to every single day. We align with women ages 20 and over through our hub of services, events, networking, and leadership. So that's about us. I'm so pleased today to introduce our panel, which includes amazing spiritual and emotional experts who will bring you valuable tips and tricks to reconnect with yourself and stay connected. They include Valerie McIntosh, Alicia Bowman, and Matthew Kelman. So to start with, we have the awesome Valerie McIntosh, who is a spiritual medium and a past life reader. She helps heal your past so the present heals and the future is enhanced, allowing you to live your full life. Now, she believes that our future is determined by what we cannot remember. If we are helped to remember, we can change our future. Now, that's really powerful. A bit about Val. Val is married with 3 grown children, 3 in-laws children, and 2 grandchildren. She has lived most of her life moving between Yukon, BC, and Alberta. While her children were growing up, she took up courses and taught aerobics and weight training at the YMCA and Gold's Gym. She likes to spend her weekends and holidays at the cabin on the Shuswap Lake in BC. After her children had grown up, her once suppressed spiritual ability started pushing forward. She's always thought that everyone could see what she saw, know what she knew, and of course, see the other side as clearly as she could. Val started taking courses to understand how to use her ability to assist others on their journey. She is very passionate about helping others through her gifts. So welcome, Val.
Thank you.
Our second speaker is Alicia Bowman, who is a yoga expert. Alicia is mom to 10-year-old Tate, wife to Mike, dog mom to Creep, which is a funny name for a dog. She's a yoga teacher, sound healing practitioner, and entrepreneur with her handcrafted skincare line, Green Butterfly. Life for Alicia is busy, and that suits her very well right now. She finds her way back to self through time in nature, gardens, her dedicated yoga practice, and through music. This year, she's gearing up to be a homeschool teacher as well, and is very excited about this new adventure. Depending on the state of this gap year, she will have lots of travel as well as trips to the mountains for ski trips and winter activities. Now, Alicia considers herself a constant student, recently finishing another year-long yoga training yoga teacher training. And she is now studying with Wild Rose Herbal College for her diploma as practical herbalist. She is inspired by nature and spends many days outdoors with her family, friends, and adventure buddies. Welcome, Alicia.
Thank you.
And last but not the least, Matthew Kelman, who is a certified yoga trainer and a spiritual coach. Matthew is a born and raised third-generation Calgarian. At 17 years old, he began his formal meditation practice with a private coach. Now at 32, he has spent the last 4 years as an entrepreneur in instructing yoga and meditation classes, facilitating healing and inspirational ceremonies, and guiding private sessions for individuals that have been seeking to cultivate a stronger sense of themselves and their gifts to be shared with their communities. Matthew holds community at the heart of his greatest efforts, and this stands directly beside personal awareness, radical acceptance, and courageous love as the principles upon which he operates in the world. He feels honored to share in the transmission of wisdom and love in the world today. Matthew, few interesting facts. Matthew has been a huge professional sports fan since his early youth. He's a huge advocate for handwritten letter, and would say that his father has passed him the torch of incessant humor, while his mother has given him her patient and strong heart. Matthew relates to the characteristics of the bison and tiger. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you.
So we're very thrilled to have these amazing speakers with us. Before we start, I want to remind everyone that we will be monitoring the chat feature for any questions that you may have during the session, which my colleague Enes will be monitoring and sharing with the speakers. Over to you, Enes.
Thank you for doing our introductions, Farah, and thank you to our speakers for joining us today. So I'm going to start you guys out with the first question, and I guess we'll decide between you who wants to go first in the answer. So what would be the #1 piece of advice that you would give someone who is just starting out on a path of emotional health? And who wants to go first?
I can go first. Just starting out on emotional health. It's a big topic for sure. I would say my #1 piece of advice would be to keep things simple. And to follow up on that, I would say to be very honest. I think I meet a lot of people in my work and just in my life who spend a lot of time thinking about their feelings. And this makes it difficult to give time and space for feelings to be felt, for feelings to be understood, for emotions to be recognized in the first place. And I think we kind of get wrapped up trying to figure out how to fix things in our lives when we are not quite sure what it is that we're experiencing emotionally. So my advice would certainly be to keep things really, really simple. Take some time if you're getting to know what your emotional states are. Take some time just to feel them out. Journaling would be a follow-up there. But there in brief is my initial answer.
Val or Alicia?
I think to add to that, or to just enhance on that, by being simple, we need to start to understand who we are, and we need to start loving ourselves. We spend too much time concerned with what other people think, what other people may be thinking about us, what other people are doing to us, and we don't fall into who am I, and who am I. What part of me do I love? What part of me is not good enough? We let the ego take over, and we fall into the feeling of not being good enough. And that starts a lot of emotional spiral, right? You're going down if you're not being true, again, as Matthew said, being true to who you are. And it starts with loving yourself.
Yeah. And I can expand on that too. I think a lot of us search for this sort of external validation through life, and especially in younger people these days. Everything is online and everything is on the surface, and we're always looking out like, what should I do in this age of information? How can I connect better? And we keep looking for these things outside, but really I think my number one piece of advice would be to just sit and be still and listen, and find that sort of sense of meditation wherever you find it. So in nature, in stillness, maybe using a guided meditation, maybe closing your eyes and just breathing and feeling your heartbeat, and go from there, becoming more aware of exactly where you're feeling, what you're feeling, and maybe labeling it, maybe not. But really, I think it's all going to be inside.
And I wanted to follow up on that, just with a question for myself. What are sort of the resources that you guys would point somebody to if they're saying, okay, I'm really struggling with trying to understand my emotions and what they are and how to express them, or sometimes just how to sit with them? Where would you point people to say, here's some place that you can get some help with that?
First and foremost, I think you and yourself are going to be the best possible judge. Like Alicia said, sitting and taking some time to be still, asking yourself, how am I feeling? And, kind of doing this in an unrelenting manner until the answer starts to come is a practice that's very uncomfortable for a lot of people. But it's about as trustworthy of a practice as you could possibly find on your path, asking yourself how you're feeling. I think from there, your most trusted people are a good resource also, your family, your friends. Having an honest conversation with them about, what's been going on with me lately? What have you noticed about how I've been acting? Can you shine some insight on me with what you're picking up on that I might be ignoring or dancing around, or, obviously to them, not paying enough attention to. Beyond that, the amount of resources for information these days is very expansive. It's never been more expansive. There's so many tools and techniques, but what I think gets lost in all of the resources is just the time that needs to be spent. Just the time that needs to be taken with yourself in order to discover more about honest interpretation of your feelings. That takes time to cultivate, especially if you're not used to doing that.
Val or Alicia, did you guys want to add anything there?
I found one of the things that I did with some of my clients, in some cases when they were having a lot of emotional holdbacks, right? So they weren't comfortable with who they were or what they were or where they were going. One thing that I found is that, look in the mirror and just look straight into your eyes and say, I love you. and say it out loud. And you can keep saying that, and your body starts to shift. Your body and stuff will come up because there's a lot of parts that we don't love, that we don't want to address, that we don't want to deal with. Like Matthew said, we kind of sidestep it. So it's like, but you know what? When you're faced with yourself and having to come up with parts of yourself that you actually do love, your body starts to shift. Your higher self steps in and starts to shift things for you, because now you're starting to address who you are and where you're going.
Yeah, I think, like Matthew said, it's so vast. There's so many options these days, online resources, classes you can attend, programs and courses. And there is no one size fits all. Like, there is a way in for each and every one of us, but some of us will reject something that might be really powerful for somebody else. So sometimes it's just starting the journey, like making that intention clear that you want to start identifying your emotions, or just sorting through them, or just kind of starting to unpack the big shit backpack that we all carry around and taking it out piece by piece. And there's going to be no one size fits all. It is a journey.
So Val, I know you kind of mentioned it. You guys, you're talking about things where we're sidestepping it. You mentioned, the shit backpack that we're dealing with. I know, Val, you said look in the mirror and say, I love you. What are some of the other sort of things you can do when you get overwhelmed by this process? Because I think that's probably one of the reasons people do sidestep it. Matthew, you said, it's a very uncomfortable process. How do you keep going despite the discomfort?
I think a lot of people, there's a lot of guilt. We carry an awful lot of guilt from past. Sitting in the present, we carry a lot of guilt, and so we knock ourselves down right away and go, we're not good enough. We can't do this. We're not there yet. I think by realizing that you are carrying that guilt and allowing that to release, and sometimes, you know what, you need help. Maybe you need to go see, like Matthew can help you with that, like Alicia can help you with that. When I do the work with people, it's that I go back into their past lives and find out, okay, what happened in your past? Could be because you're holding on to something that right now we should be living our ideal life. We should be, it's like, enjoy everything. Everything is wonderful. Everything is, you're happy, you're satisfied, you're content, but our ego gets in there and goes, no, you're not. You know what, you just didn't do this right, and you didn't do that right, and somebody said this about you. And so we move into our ego life. And I think maybe just becoming aware of our ideal life and our ego, and don't let that ego take over. Just simmer it down a little bit, and let's move into, when you go into the ego, into the ideal life, the ego will diminish. You don't want to destroy it because it'll fight back harder. So you just kind of, let's just take a look at it this way instead of that, instead of through the ego way. So just by understanding, ideally, the only reason we're here is to love. End of story. But it has to start with ourselves. We have to love ourselves before we can even begin to go out into somebody else and love somebody else, or love what's going on.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Alicia.
Okay. I think a practical application that I use for myself when I'm feeling unhappy or discomfort, a negative emotion, something in my life needs to change, right? So either with this situation or, how I'm feeling, it either needs to be a perspective change. I need to change the way I'm thinking about something, or I need to change the actual situation. So you can start to first get clear on what you want. How do you want to feel? What energy do you want to hold within yourself? And then once you know that, you can decide, do I need to change my thinking? Do I need to get out of my own way? Or do I actually need to change something in my life? And then go from there.
That's really powerful. I think, like, leaning into the first point that we made at the beginning of this question about simplicity and honesty, I think it's really, really hard to overrate the power of taking a really deep breath. As far as a therapeutic but instantaneous effect goes, a deep breath will serve you very, very well in this life all the time. And it's a constantly effective measure to do what Alicia's talking about, to create a change in perspective or a change in your immediate environment. You know, people talk about anxiety a lot when it comes to things in this realm, emotional health and spiritual health. And anxiety can be such a beautiful gift too, if we flip the perspective on it, like these ladies were talking about. And you can feel a very physical transformation, which is usually where I think a lot of us get kind of stuck, is working with our density, with working with what's like stuck in our body, or what's like lingering around the most often. Whether that's just like a little pain in our knee that reminds us when we try to meditate and be calm that we have pain in our body. A deep breath can kind of shift that in 2 seconds, right? And I can't even count how many people I've sat with that just don't do that. They don't take a really deep breath, like, ever. Or if they do, it exacerbates stress. It's like a deep breath that's holding on for dear life, instead of just filling the lungs and like letting them be saturated for a few moments, and then learning to trust what you've brought into yourself, and then exhale. And by the time you're done, you're absolutely in a different space than you were before you started. And it, you can do that a bunch of times.
Yeah,
Another thing too,
I
think
fully
that-
agree.
sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'll go fast. I fully agree. The deep breath thing. And when you practice that, when you know you're freaking out and you force yourself to take that breath, or maybe you're in a difficult and you're uncomfortable physically, but you just breathe and you allow yourself to breathe and tell yourself that you're safe. That is something that transfers into life, and you'll start taking a deep breath before you even realize you're doing it. You're like freaking out and you're like, calm breath, and you won't even realize it, because it just became your practice. And that, it's a beautiful thing. But one quick thing on anxiety, I like to think of anxiety, that anxious energy in the body, as misplaced energy. So sometimes I tell that to people. I'm like, it's just misplaced energy, and you can all transform it, turn it into what you need it to be. So, because I think a lot of people feel anxiety about their anxiety, and that's like a deep spiral.
And then you keep going. Another thing, when you're when you got a lot of things on your plate that you're uncomfortable with, sometimes just to focus on what is right in your life, just the gratitude, right? I have a loving family. I have this, I have that. There's a lot of things in your life that are good. When you start to focus on those, or bring that up front, what is the anxiety and all the other stuff that is not so good in your life suddenly kind of diminishes. And the more you focus on what's good in your life, the bad just can't sit there, can't stay there. You're not focusing on it, it's not growing.
Alicia, I know what you mean. I have a friend who was anxious about, she was taking a relaxation course and a course just to deal with her anxiety. And she was very anxious about spending the money to take the course for that. So her anxiety was about, how to deal with her anxiety. So I think people do kind of get into that. One of the things all of you have touched on.
Oh, yeah. And another thing with that is that another thing on that is a lot of people will go into those courses and realize that laying down flat on their back with their eyes closed is a huge trigger for them, for their trauma or their anxiety. And then they start to really, well, I mean, that's like a learning tool too, right? You start to learn about yourself and your triggers. But yeah, they go in thinking meditation is going to be this beautiful experience, and then they feel way more freaked out for whatever reason, just by doing it. So it's just interesting.
So part of that, and that's come up here, is self-awareness. So we did talk about a bit more emotional self-awareness. How can someone become more self-aware? What would be suggestions that you guys would make for that, in addition to what we've kind of talked about already?
I would say for sure, meditate, and try not to think about meditation as a particular style of practice that you have to learn how to do. Meditate as in take time for yourself to sit and breathe and let your thoughts be what your thoughts are, let your feelings be what your feelings are, and practice not running away from those when they come up, when you start observing what's going on with you, and start carving out a reasonable amount of time for yourself to do that. 5 minutes a day makes a huge difference. Just do it for a week and you'll see. It's a huge leap from doing it, with 0 minutes of your day. Huge. And it doesn't take that long. I think meditating, pure and simple, is about the most important thing that you can do for self-awareness. And the reason I think that's true, especially today, is because the world is so exciting externally. There's so much going on. There's so many distractions. There's so many lights. There's so much technology that we get kind of compelled to spend all of our attention on the world that's around us. And we end up living half of a life without really identifying what the world within us is all about. This body is an ancient technology. It's a beautiful technology. It's perfect, actually. And everything is happening within that system. And most of us give all of the credit to what's happening with us, to these things and these events that are going on way far away from us with people that we're not very connected to. And we end up living a life where we're not really able to absorb or integrate what's going on internally, how we're responding and whatnot. 5 minutes a day, just watching yourself and observing is perfect. And to answer this question from Wendy here very quickly, I think both of those times are great. And I would say, weave it into the fabric of your life. I've always found a lot of pleasure in doing it first thing in the morning. It's actually become my favorite reason to get up earlier. And that's helped me not only with my meditation practice, but also to get more in touch with like nature, with the world, with the sunrise, with the outside, with the sound of birds. Doing it in the evening is great too, especially if you've had a long day, but I'll let the other speakers kind of touch on that.
I think it's beautiful to meditate in the morning first thing. And even if it's literally just one, and I put around even any kind of ritual, like for me, I like to light one incense and say a little prayer, anything for the day, and just sit for sometimes it's only 5 minutes. Sometimes it's not even 5 minutes. Sometimes I have half an hour. Sometimes I'm doing I don't know, more specific practices around that with breath work and yoga practice. So, but I love the rest of the day that follows after a morning meditation practice. It's just it sets the tone. It makes you'll feel more present in every single moment. And I think that's a really good way to start with that self-awareness piece. So sometimes you can just bring it back to the breath and focus on your breath, and that'll anchor you into the exact moment you're living right now. Sometimes you might just identify the triggers that you feel through the day, that the places where you feel uncomfortable, or maybe you're getting angry with your kids or your husband or yourself or whatever, and just becoming aware of why that happened and why am I upset right now? And then those questions will soon give you answers. And then you can start to just sift through all of that and decide again, is it situational or is it perspective? And all the pieces will start to come together.
I agree.
Do you find it helps if you have a certain spot that you use for meditation, like there's a room or there's a set spot for you?
I think, yeah, especially at first.
Yeah,
Val, I think you were going to say something.
It's just
as soon as you
beginning of your
walk into
practice,
that
and then you
room,
go to that spot, and
yeah,
yeah.
your mind already sets yourself into I'm going into my room to meditate, and everything all kind of falls into place to go, okay, and you can relax more. You can all of a sudden be more aware of the meditation itself when you have a special place as opposed, and it doesn't have to be a special meditation room. It can just be the corner of the living room if that's what you got. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, to add a little note to that, I would say it can be a really beautiful practice to discover places that you like to meditate as well. I think it's super helpful to have have a spot in a common place for yourself, like at home, whether that's a corner where you do set up, music and incense or whatever it is that helps support your process. But, making meditation a part of your trips through nature is a really, really lovely thing. You're going for a walk through like a local park, or if you're out in the mountains or something, like taking a time to do that can be so beautiful. And this is another thing about self-awareness that I think ties into the question of emotional awareness, is that every single facet of ourselves is indicative of our entire self. So if we're looking at our emotional health is telling us exactly how our entire self is. And if we're looking to be more self-aware, then every moment provides an equal opportunity to see how we're doing, how we're feeling, how we're thinking, how our body is. Everything is telling us the whole picture. So I think my final note is the best thing you can do for self-awareness is to pay attention, because every moment is giving you the feedback. Every moment. If you're not paying attention, you might not get it. But if you are paying attention, you'll never go with an unanswered question in your life. You just won't, because the answer is right there. And nature is really, really helpful at providing that feedback in the way that I would say is naturally comfortable. It's just sometimes we haven't had a relationship with trees or water or mountains that's been like just honed in on, like respected. We haven't gone and said like, I've been talking to the trees my whole life. But the truth, it's true for almost all of us. We get lots of messages from these beautiful beings in nature, and they can provide us very honest reflection of who we are also. Yeah.
I really like that. I like the idea of sort of having feedback from others. One of the comments we had, Deb Magson mentioned this. Sometimes we forget that there are other people who come and ask us for help, right? And we provide advice, but we seem very reluctant to kind of do that for ourselves. So does it kind of help sometimes to think about, okay, if it wasn't me in this particular situation, if it was somebody else who came to me and asked me that advice, what would I say to them? Because we do sometimes have the habit of, we're much kinder to other people than we often are to ourselves.
True enough.
Very true. That's kind of a famous saying, right? Sometimes it's easier to give than it is to receive. And that's maybe one of the hardest parts about meditating and developing a self-awareness practice, is that like you're putting yourself in a position to receive purely. And sometimes the truth is exactly what we don't want to hear. Sometimes the truth of how we're feeling is something we've been dodging for decades, like honestly. And what's really beautiful about just receiving, and that can be from yourself, it can be from nature, it can be from a teacher, it can be from loved ones, but the power of receiving is that all it takes to dissipate sometimes even decades worth of pain and torment is a simple acknowledgement. Sometimes that's all it takes, is just to say, that is true. Like, I have been in trauma. I have been suffering for a long time. Sometimes that's all it takes for the healing to just move, for the healing to come in, to fill your body, to bring a meditation. Yeah.
Wendy wanted to know if there are any books that you guys would recommend on self-awareness and emotional health.
Oh, there's a whole library.
But one that for women, because I tend to draw in a lot of women often women who have lost touch with themselves by providing for their families and everybody else around them, and, you know, like not really filling their own cup. And maybe they came to yoga, or they came to me because they suddenly realized that they're better off when they do look after themselves. So something that I like to tell them to look for is Rebecca Campbell's Rise Sister Rise. It comes in tiny little chapters, and every single chapter ends with journaling questions, and so it starts to unravel everything and kind of set someone back on their own internal course. It's a lot about like, what is your soul calling you to do? You know, and who are you really, and what really matters. So that one's really palatable. I think it's quite easy.
I've read those and they're awesome. They're awesome books. Yes.
If you're looking for a really inspirational book, Wendy probably knows this because I've mentioned it already. I just finished Untamed by Glennon Doyle, and it's not so much sort of advice, but it's very inspirational as to sort of living your own life, being your highest self, and yeah, looking through all of that. It's awesome. All right. So next question is, how can we help a loved one on this journey? So, you know, we've got a number of moms in the group, so, you know, they look out for their children, and sometimes, you know, how do you help your kids go through things that are tough and emotional for them? How do you help a spouse or parent or a good friend?
In my house, with my son, because I know his sort of triggers. So like if he's had too many video games or too much candy or just too much stimulation in general with, you know, how school and activities and everything just build up, it's always going back to nature. And that is the easiest way to just clear that slate, and he'll come back so much happier, you know? And then with my husband, it's not as simple, but I will do it in a way that he doesn't even know it's happening, by just asking little questions and just bringing, you know, well, why did that upset you? You know, like just asking him the questions that maybe he's not asking himself, but not dropping seeds, you know, because he doesn't want me to yoga him. Yeah.
That is awesome advice.
I find that for me, it's very important to, like, it's probably the most important thing I would say that's come forward in my time of practicing, to stay out of a judgment zone. And, you know, as soon as I think that I know what somebody's thinking, or as soon as I assume that, you know, why somebody is approaching me in a certain way, that's my cue to kind of let that go. Judgment for me has been a big piece in sharing this journey with other people, and then being of help. I feel like if I stay out of judgment, and I'm responsible for my own well-being, if I'm responsible to keep myself, you know, feeling centered, then I can show up exactly as in an honest or authentic expression of myself with everybody. Meaning that if I need somebody to hold some space for me to cry, then I'm not going to hold that back, and I'm not going to test them to see if they're like a safe enough place, because I'm going to feel like comfortable enough to approach them because of the work that I've done. And I'll just kind of trust the authentic expression that comes forward in the presence of that person. Yeah, for me, remaining out of judgment is something that I meditate for. I meditate to clear out the judgments that would otherwise, you know, linger with me into any kind of situation.
Okay, I have a totally different, I guess I want to say issue with this, is because when people come to me, like family or loved ones, being a psychic, I know what's going on. I know what they're feeling. I know where it's coming from, but it's not my place to just blurt it out and tell them, this is why you're acting this way. and this is what you need to do, right? So I will, in a gentle way, try and make them just keep asking them questions, just keep working to try and get so that they totally understand where they're coming from, what's going on with them, and that self-heals them themselves. I like I said, I kind of try and, I know when I come at my kids with something, they go, is this mom or is this voodoo mom? And I'm like, this is mom, or this is I'm talking voodoo now. Let's get this over with. Let's help you through this. I think just by a lot of times with helping people, if they're willing to open just to talk to you, you can gently ask them questions back, and they'll come up with they'll solve their own issues. They'll help. They just need that assistance to sit beside them, just so that, and they understand that somebody else understands what they're going through, I guess. Sorry, that's what I do.
Yeah, I actually I really appreciate that a lot. And to follow up on that, I would like in a lot of the work that I've been doing this year, community has been such an important aspect. And what I've noticed in community is that like people have to heal themselves, right? Or people, not there's healings can occur in the presence of other people, but the healing is being done for oneself. And the best thing that can be given to anybody looking for healing is an opportunity to heal themselves, to be supported in their own healing, in the healing of themselves. And it's the most powerful thing that I've witnessed in this healing community is having a group of people that are supporting each other to find their own voice, or to find their own honest expression, or to like identify in front of somebody what they're going through, because that in itself is very, very healing. And then to be witnessed by somebody in that kind of validates it, makes it really real, not just internally but in the world as well.
We are the answers to each other, right? So we are the questions and answers to each other just by sitting with somebody. You know in your own soul, where that emotion is coming from. You know what your, I'm not going to call it a problem because there is no problems, but you know what that emotional upset is. And sometimes you just need somebody just to sit with you, just to acknowledge you. And it slowly starts to come out, and you self-heal, because we're not healers. We're just kind of opening the door and allowing them to do the healing themselves. But to say that you're a healer, no, we're not healers. They heal themselves. The body self-heals. But sometimes they just need somebody to hold their hand, that little bit of guidance just to help them through that. And it all comes out, and it just, you can watch it. If you can see the energy around them, you can see the healing that's taking place. But it's just by being a support.
So one of the questions we have is, so there are a lot of people who are apprehensive about seeking help for spiritual healing. They do want to do it, but they're very much afraid of what that's going to open up. So there's, the Pandora's box of if I deal with this, what all comes out. How do you get over that? How can someone get over that? What's that? Yeah.
And I just answer this, when you're with, when I have people come to me and they need that assistance, the information that I get is channeled in. The guides only will channel in and will give them the information that they can handle at that time. So they get little bits and pieces. They need to heal from, it's like an onion. So you're peeling this onion, you get little bits and pieces. The universe, the guides know, their guides and their masters know, and they will give them enough information just to heal that spot. We're not going to go in there and they're not going to go in and just, take out a whole bone, right? They're going to heal everything first. So you're going in layers. So anybody that wants to come in for spiritual healing, understand that their guides, their masters are only going to give them what they can handle at the time. It's not going to be so overwhelming that they go into a stress mode. It's a very, very gentle type healing. And it's always for their best interest, for their highest good, not for anything else.
Yeah, I think this is a really big question too. It's like seeking this kind of help where it's very unfamiliar, uncomfortable. I see this quite a lot, and I think Val kind of described it perfectly. And the thing to remember about this process of entertaining, let's say at the beginning, spiritual or psychic help or healing, is that you're in charge of the situation. You're not going to be given something that you can't handle. You're in charge of it. You know, if something comes your way that is, like, let's say Pandora, way out of the box, you can just stop it. You know, you can calm yourself down, come back to your breath, go back to the familiar things at any point in time. And when you're, going deeper and deeper into this kind of process, some days you're going to feel a lot ready to go deeper, and you're going to get more. And other days you're going to need to take a little break, and that's fine. Yeah, exactly. So I think, being patient is helpful, little bits at a time. And then it's a lot about trust, like if you're sitting with Alicia, Val, or myself in a session of any kind, trust is an important thing. And sometimes that takes time to cultivate. Sometimes you get it right away, and it's always going to come back down to trusting yourself. If you trust yourself, you're never going to be compromised, because if you trust yourself and you find yourself in a difficult situation, you're going to be able to get yourself out of that because you trust yourself to. So that's something that gets fashioned over time within this process. And then you'll start to realize, everybody is providing you a different kind of a mirror so that you can see yourself in a different kind of a way. And you can maybe heal that part of yourself by acknowledging it.
I like the idea of it being, sort of step by step, and also becoming used to something new that you're doing. Because I'm someone where if I'm in a new place, I tend to be very, very anxious, and it takes me a while to just get back to my comfort level. So that's really great. I'm wondering if our audience has any more questions for these guys. What are some of the things, I think we started out with, how do you get started on this? What's the basic? But out of your experience, what are sort of some of the biggest things that you can do for yourself in terms of addressing emotional and spiritual health? What have you guys found has been like sort of the thing that helped you the most?
I think becoming aware of how you are feeling. We all have, it's kind of like that backpack, right? Like we have all these emotions that sit in there. We're here basically just to feel that emotion, acknowledge that emotion, see what it feels like to go through our body, but then let it go. And the problem is a lot of times we hold on to it. And so I think just being aware of, am I still holding on to that grudge? Am I still holding on to that love? Am I still holding on to that anxiety? And when you are, then it's like, here we go. Let breathe it away. We can breathe it. But when you become aware of it, you can dissolve it. People hold on to things because some people like to hold grudges, right? And they don't realize they're doing it, but they do. It's like, well, you know what? He really shafted me, so I'm not going to let that go, right? Not yet. I will, but not today. And so it starts, it comes out here, but if you don't address it, it starts to come inside and until it affects your physical body. And so, when you got a foot that hurts, when you got an arm that hurts, when your chest feels heavy, okay, I've got some emotional impact here that I need to address. I need to find out where this is coming from. Once you're aware of it, you can move it right. It heals it and it moves it right out of your body, and suddenly that pain is gone.
Mm-hmm. I agree. One question that I like to play with in meditation or just in general is who's hungry. So maybe like Val said, some people like to hold grudges. Why do you want that grudge? Like, who's hungry? What are you feeding with that grudge? It comes down to food and feeding yourself too. Like sometimes we fill our faces with food and we're not hungry for food. we're sad or something, like we need to kind of start to go a little bit deeper. When your stomach is full and you're reaching for more food, what are you feeding? Like, what is that? So we need to start just becoming more self-aware of those things. Or, like this social media addiction, sometimes we're like, what is this feeding me? Because we're not only eating the food, we're eating like whatever, the energy we're taking in that is, that's impacting us and affecting us in different ways. And we have these addictions that we sometimes need to feed. Like, I don't know, a lot of people will have a drink before they go to bed, and it's like a little bit of addiction there. Maybe you're not getting drunk. Maybe it's just a drink. Maybe you really just enjoy the drink. I love wine. I love wine. But sometimes I'm reaching for the wine and I'm like, wait, why do I want this? Oh, I'm just anxious. Like there's always something behind the action. So the self-awareness is so key. Like ask yourself, who's hungry? Why am I doing this? And meditation, always coming back to meditation. I know it's like there's a big resistance there. It feels like a wall sometimes, but that resistance that we feel to the practice is the price, because the practice is a gift. So you pay that price and you step over that resistance wall, and then you get to partake. And that's where the healing comes. And it's such a gift. Every time I come back to my yoga mat, after it's been a little bit of a break, after I had to fight down a bunch of resistance, I'm like, oh my God, why did I leave it so long? This is what I needed. This is the medicine. Like, why did I put this off? So yeah, those are two really big pieces: awareness and a practice. Maybe it's not meditation. Maybe you want to go for a walk in the morning instead or something, but make that date with yourself, and don't break promises to yourself. If you say you're going to do something, do it. You have to do it.
I agree.
Matthew, what about you?
Yeah, I loved what both of you just said. That was phenomenal. I would say another thing that's been very important for the development in my life is having a teacher, and that's something that I've had a connection to or a relationship with, like I would say since the beginning of my self practices. And my teachers, I've had many teachers over the years, but I've always had somebody in my life that I could go and ask questions to, and I've had people that I could actually save my questions for, and then bring them to them, and in session just really get into the depth of what I had been experiencing, to talk about what I'd been dreaming about, to talk about what came out of my journal pen over the last month, to talk about why, even though I want to meditate so badly, I had a month where I just didn't want to do it very much. And I had somebody who I had given authority to, somebody who had experience or expertise in the fields that I was looking into, right? My own well-being. And they could hold some ground for me. They would provide me with techniques and tips. And based on what I was asking for from the world, my teacher would show up in different ways. So having somebody has been a very important part of my my developing practices. And I've had one, I would say, since the moment I started taking this very seriously, and still to this day, it's a very integral part of what keeps me very integrated as not only a student, but also as a teacher of these kinds of things.
We're pretty close to the end. So one really quick question. There are some of us who are not morning people, and you guys have talked sort of about your morning routine of getting up to do yoga or meditating in the morning. We did kind of talk about and said, well, you can also meditate in the evening. What's the advice for us not so early birds?
I do a little bit of a meditation in the morning, but I do an evening meditation. Mm-hmm. It allows me to sleep at night, and mm-hmm. I have asked for all the old energies. Like I just sit and breathe in the new energies that I need for tomorrow, and breathe out the old energies that I took on today that I don't need. So I don't think it really matters. You could probably meditate in the afternoon. It doesn't matter as long as you take that time for you with no distractions.
I love that. I love I think, and I just want to say one more thing, which is realize what's at stake if you don't do it. Realize what you're giving up if you don't do the thing that you wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much, our panelists. I think you guys have given us some really great advice here. And I believe that Candida was going to say just a couple of words to close up the session.
Well, I think as you saw in the chat, this has been so timely. I believe in everything I said to heart. I cannot thank you enough. What a great combination of panel. The three of you are just amazing. Thank you so much for accepting this invite. I thank everyone who has joined in, in all these webinars. So thank you again. And thank you to the amazing people on the board and team that have really put this together. It really just takes everyone to make it happen. So thank you so much. We're getting excited for our next week's. It's our last one, and really want to see you there. So thank you, everybody. Just amazing. Lots of good things to take away. And let us know how we're doing. Just an email and that. I know I'm getting some emails from people. Thank you so much. And yeah, let us know how we're doing. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for joining us today. This video was brought to you by WomenIN and Calgary's Business, featured on MegaPixx.